Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. My co-host is Judith Crosier, and today is when we always tackle your workplace well-being questions. Today's topic is a very important one, and we welcome back mental health advocate, speaker, consultant, and all-round decent guy, Jono Poon. He is going to be talking to us about a subject which needs a lot more discussion, that of racial justice. And this is where certain barriers may be experienced in the workplace for people of colour, people of different cultures, and this may come across in the form of biases, conscious or unconscious, and behaviours. This is a discussion we really do need to get into. Let's head over to the main studio. Welcome back to the studio, Jono. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, thank you especially for this particular topic.
Yes.
I know it's something that we touched on briefly when you were on last, but right now I think it's a really important conversation to have. It's a sad fact that although many organisations are working hard to address racism, whether outright or unconscious bias, it's still present. And I just wanted to kick off with, what have you seen? Because I know I've seen people look at me funny until I open my mouth, and then they hear I can speak with an English accent, and suddenly they all visibly relax.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I think this is a huge topic for us, for those who are having a different ethnic background in a different country. It's something that I see at work quite often, more often than I probably should pay attention to, but sometimes you just can't help yourself but to notice these little subtle things. But it's the subtle microaggressions, being excluded for things, or sometimes being stereotyped for certain things, like you must be good at maths because you're Chinese.
Okay, wow.
That's a very,
It is!
very typical one.
Yeah.
That one happens a lot. I think just because of the maths curriculum in Hong Kong and Asia is much higher when they're younger. So if they have migrated over to study, for instance, their maths level and skills is a much higher level than we would have over in this country. So then I think that creates like a little stereotype of people think, oh, he's always in the top maths class, so therefore, you know, every Chinese person must know maths. Like that kind of stereotype happens. There's also types experiences myself is, oh, you all look the same.
Yeah.
Where are you from? That's the common question. It's
I'm
not,
sorry, do
it's not
people
harmful.
actually say that?
Yeah, it's not a harmful
Wow,
question.
okay.
Like, where are you from? It's
No,
genuinely
it's the
curious.
one before.
Where are you from? It's like, cool, you know, I'm from, but I was born here, so
Yes.
I'm from England.
Yes.
I speak English, I'm British, I have a British passport, I'm English. So that's kind of the common one I hear. It's not like, you know, they don't come out of like being offensive, like where are you from? They're just curious, where is your parents or your nationality is from? And that helps create conversation and trying to be more nice, but sometimes that's not the question that some people may see that's very offensive, or that's not where it is.
And it can be exhausting if you're always asked that question, where are you from, rather than, I don't know, how was your journey today, or something like that, which somebody else would do as polite conversation. How do we tell the difference between someone, say, making a genuine mistake with what they say, or someone just being a bit thoughtless, and somebody who's being outright rude or racist?
So there's three differences that you noted down there. First one is mispronunciation of names. I mean, that comes easy. Sometimes people pronounce their J's or their H's differently. For instance, I have shortened my name from Jonathan to Jono, but then there's still people that goes Jono, or like they pronounce it differently. I was like, I'm not finding it offensive because it's not really my name anyway. So, but I'm saying that's a short example.
Yeah.
But if you say your heritage name, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
For instance, the footballers, for instance, that's a common one.
Yes.
You get racial abuses on the football pitch, and that's just and I think that comes from the adults, and because the adults do it, then the kids exemplifies and learn from the adults. They're like, oh, my dad is doing it, my uncle is doing it, so therefore it's like normal. But they don't actually know what it means and how offensive it can actually be. I think there's a massive crackdown on football with racism, kick it out, and those kind of communities and groups, which highlights the education and awareness that's needed to how you should behave appropriately at games or events or just in general, really. And then you noted down another one, which was exclusion. Being excluded from opportunities because maybe your English isn't that great because it's your second language or your third language or whatever it is. Maybe you've been excluded because you didn't fit in or they don't find you fitting into the group, so then they exclude you from meetings or things that pass by. And then that causes, eventually you start becoming excluded and you don't feel inspired, motivated, and you don't thrive at work. And then people ask you, why are your productivity down? Why are you not inspired to work? And then you're just like, well, if I'm included more.
Sometimes I think people don't even recognise that that's been building up and building up. I think that can just happen, and then you just don't know why you don't like work, but you don't like it anymore. That's really sad.
Yeah, really is.
That's
I read it on forums all the time when people are getting passed up because they speak a different language, or the food they bring in is different.
It smells funny,
And then things like that, and it happens, and therefore there's times where they do get excluded, and it becomes like a mental health challenge because
of course it would do.
Just being isolated, depressed, your self-worth goes down the drain, and then your confidence goes down because you're not included in things. And there's a lot of things that happen that I still do see and hear about it.
So when you see and hear people being racist, or it could be interpreted that way, how do you call them out on it without it becoming a bigger issue?
Yeah, calling out is definitely the hardest. But again, it's a tough conversation to have. It's like,
really
well, I'm not sure if you realise. You change your tonality and you frame it differently. I'm not sure if you realised what you said just there can come across offensive to some people. It may not be offensive to me because I know you, or for instance, and stuff like that. But if you said that to someone else, they might find it more offensive than I would. And that's the kind of, I'm not saying pushing it away, but just framing it a little differently, and it creates that learning opportunity for them to understand, oh, what I said wasn't nice, like, where are you from? Okay, maybe next time I'll ask, what's your heritage?
Yeah, that's true. That's such a simple reframing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nicer question. It's a nicer question, isn't it?
Out of curiosity, which you may be wanting to ask, but yes, going direct to that, where are you from, can feel quite aggressive.
It's very informal, but again, change of a little language and just little wording. I mean, it's all words at the end of the day, and how you change it, what's it meant, it's only you know the meaning that you put behind it. But that comes with your curiosity.
Absolutely, and we've all got heritage, so anyone would probably like to be asked about their heritage because it gives them a chance to talk about their family and ancestors, etc. I don't know. I'm saying that, I'm making that assumption, but I'm just thinking.
Tell us about it in the comments. Actually, let us know.
Yeah, is that a big assumption for me to make? But I think that people do like to be asked about themselves and their family. So where do you think we need to start addressing? Is it a case of education, or is it more systemic than that?
It's training, discussions, podcasts like these, conversations like this, and it's all, I feel like, it comes with processes and policies. There's all sorts of policies and stuff, but then sometimes policies can only do so much. And it's more about just having an open and honest conversation with people about where do you feel like we're not doing enough of, or that could support you enough in a way? Is there enough inclusion in the ways that we could help you with any cultural things or anything that you want to bring awareness to, bring to the table, or things that have been talked about that you didn't feel comfortable?
Because policies are all well and good, but if people don't buy into them, are they really going to change?
That's the thing, you can have policies, but then if people don't actually follow them, actually look at just having them for ticking a box exercise, which most, I say some organisations do, most would follow it. But again, how you interact and how you behave in person, I think goes a long way.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad we've got you. Thank you for being here. Yes. We are going to be right back just after this.
What's up? It's Brian Randolph, host of Keeping It Real with Randy Boy. You can catch me every Saturday morning at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time on Vitality TV, right here on E360 TV. Check me out, Randy Boy.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We've got Jono with us, and we're talking about a very important subject, which is racism in the workplace. So you've mentioned that it can make people feel excluded, or that people can make others feel excluded. Can we go into that a little bit more? So what effect really does that have on a person if they're being excluded because of their race, potentially? And how does it affect their practical performance in the workplace as well?
Yeah, this is the most profound, I would say, profound experience, because some people would feel isolated, excluded, then they start, like I mentioned just before, their productivity goes down, their self-worth goes down, their confidence goes down, and you start getting depressed, you start questioning your identity, you start questioning your value of person as an individual. And it goes deeper, because then there's times where you would go, I'm not doing good. Why am I not doing good enough? How can I do better? And like, how come I feel like whatever I'm pushing out doesn't seem to be accepted? And sometimes it could be you're just in the wrong environment. You might not be around the right people, the right environment of learning. It might not be your area of expertise. It might not be something you enjoy in general. That's another thing that most people fall into a line of work where they don't actually enjoy what they do. But they're in it because they need to pay their bills and get some income in, but then they're too afraid to also change the environment to something they do really want to do.
Just to interrupt, sorry, before you ask the next question. With that, these are things people could be feeling anyway without the pressure of race on top, or exclusion, or the other behaviours going on there. I mean, do we need to have those conversations more in general?
Yes, we do.
Simple as that, really.
As simple as that,
in the
yes,
workplace,
we do.
Yes.
We do, but racism, again, is something that makes it harder, because that's another topic most people don't understand.
Yeah, and it's sensitive too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sensitive, and they don't know who they can talk to, if their colleagues are trustworthy enough to talk about these, or comfortable enough to talk about these subject matters. Yeah. Some people don't understand what it means, so therefore sometimes it's harder to have those discussions. Your HR managers or departments might have an understanding, a better understanding. They should, I say should. But sometimes it just takes another third-party organisation to come in to help support that. Might be education, awareness, training.
That's really important, actually, that the support can be out there, but it may not be in your organisation itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of support organisations that do support with hate crime, racism and things like that. And there's a lot of organisations out there that is supporting that.
Well, that's good to know as well. If your organisation isn't equipped to deal with it, then there are third parties or agencies out there that can deal with it. And for people who are feeling discriminated against, are there strategies that they can use to assert themselves?
First would be documenting it. Documenting an incident, when it happened, how it happened, what's the details. Yeah, keep it, log it. And then number two would be report it to a hate crime line if needed, if it goes that serious. There's hate crime hotlines available with charities and things that do offer that kind of support. So then the third one would be finding people that support you going through that period, because it can be challenging.
Horribly, because you're having to speak up against something which is probably ingrained in a certain business culture. Yeah. On the subject of strategies as well, people create their own, and they may not be healthy ones. So, for example, I've heard this being said that this was from a black woman, and she said she wanted to become a lot more self-deprecating whenever anything went wrong, because she didn't want to play into the stereotype of angry black woman.
Okay.
And it's things like that. How do you help somebody change that mindset? That you are allowed to be angry,
and
no matter whoever you are.
Yeah.
You know, where do you start?
Well, firstly, it's okay to feel angry and have those kind of emotions, and it's understandable if you come across any incident that makes you feel angry. And how you choose to respond is the most important part. And we could always choose to take a breath, process it, understand what's going on, and then readdress it. We don't have to react to it instantly. And I know there's a lot of instances where you do have to react, or you do just spontaneously react. You can't help it. And for the strategy on that, I would say it's knowing your own values, who you are in general as a person. I think that it's hard when you're going through the emotions and everything's happening. But when you know who you are, having your identity, I'm not that type of person to be always angry at people. There must be a reason for this if it was to cause that. So understanding that, but also having the right support, personal development work that you could probably do, or coaches, or you've got therapists, you've got support groups, peer support groups that help change your perspective. And things like at the Man Cave we do is having that peer support group where you do get to talk about all your thoughts and everything that's going on in your life, and then just have a little download of it going through that meeting, get supported, realise it's okay to go through all those, and then again you just make a fresh start. At the end of the day, it's all words.
It's true.
But it's the meaning of the words we always give it. And I had this was something that profoundly changed my path, was changing the meaning of words. Okay. Because there's times where I feel like I'm not good enough. And then instead of saying I'm not good enough, say I'm incredible. Yeah, like those little things is subtle. Yeah. The words we don't actually address what words go in our thoughts. Thoughts aren't real until we make them real.
Yeah, it's true.
But we get to change the meaning behind them. Saying I'm not good enough. Okay, I'm not good enough in what? Change the context.
Yes.
I'm not good enough. It could be I'm just not there yet, or I haven't learnt enough yet.
I'm getting better at. Yeah, I like that.
So understanding and framing your words is very important.
And that's so important when somebody has had that that narrative programmed into them. It is about almost catching yourself when you're having those negative thoughts and then asking yourself, well, what can I do? And that's not to push blame onto the person, because unfortunately that faulty programming was set there by someone else. But we can take responsibility and action, empowered action, to deal with it.
Yeah, we're accountable to our own actions and taking responsibility full on about it. And I think a nice exercise that I did when I first started was tallying up all my negative words that I used in my head.
I love it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like 50, 100 and all sorts. And then once you have that list and you go through it every day for like a week or 2 weeks and you start seeing a pattern, then start changing those into more empowering words.
Goodness, like an affirmation, really.
It is, but it's once you start, again, like you said, reprogramming your words and your brain, but again, the meaning you choose to put behind it. Some words could mean differently, every word.
Yes.
Your definition of incredible could be so different to someone else's incredible. Someone's happiness has got a different shape and mind of it than someone else. So what you have is the most important part.
Yes, and with that, finding the patterns, you might find the words that you commonly use, and actually that's when it gets even deeper, that you start going, oh, hang on a minute, my dad always used that word, my mum always used that word, and then, is that even my voice? Oh.
Is that even my word?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you use words that your friends use.
Yes.
Because you hang around them so much, you pick up on their vocabulary.
Oh,
and you're like, I've never said that word before. Where did I use that? It's like, oh, I use it because I'm with so-and-so.
That's a brilliant technique.
My mum always used to say to me, I know when you're speaking to your friends from Watford on the phone because of how I spoke and the words that I use and vocabulary. So that's a real thing.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to try that now. That's really good. It's that self-awareness. And just before we go to break, with those race-neutral policies, if people are trying to make them, they can get to a point where it begins to go too far the other way, in the sense of we can't account for every single nuance. but we do need to account for the important ones. But how do we decide as an organisation what is important? Is this a case of talking to people?
Yeah, I think it's just talking to the needs of your employees.
Yeah, it really is.
It is just having a conversation. Do you need a prayer room? Yeah. Do you need times for, where you need to just do meditations or things like that? Do you need time just to process whatever you need to go? I don't know. Every culture's got different things. So, like you said, speaking to an employee is what do you need, and then create an environment for it, creating a supportive place, and it goes a long way when you're supporting the needs of your team.
It's as simple as that, isn't it, really? Because it comes back to things that previous guests have said, where it's a case of not thinking, oh, I know the answers to everything. Yes. I'm just going to put a prayer room in because that's what everyone's doing. It's about speaking to people. And if the need is no longer there anymore because the culture has changed or whatever has changed in the organisation, then that can be changed as well. It's about staying flexible too. Why do we not talk to each other in organisations?
Exactly, it's showing willing, isn't it? Even if you don't know all the answers, it's just showing willing to make those requirements happen.
Sometimes, again, the one-size-fits-all policies. Like, here's a blanket policy, you will now follow it. Well, that doesn't really work for, especially in this day and age where it's all multicultural, diverse, and inclusion, and we all have different needs and different cultures have different things that they need, and until you find out what that is for your team, I think it's just having those conversations. Be flexible. It's just a document that you can change. Again, it's all words.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, well, hold that thought. We will be back just after this. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. It's great to talk with you, Jono, and thank you so much for giving us your time. It's a big topic. We can't unpack everything all in one day, but I think you've made some really interesting points and given us some good exercises. If you've just tuned in, take it back, listen to some of these exercises. They're really great ways of understanding your own mindset. Now, Jono, something I think I've done so long that I've forgotten I do it is masking. You hide, you can say I'm blonde at the front as well as even. I haven't kept my natural hair. But taken further, it can go into whitewashing yourself. Mm-hmm. And that means you're not embracing so much of your heritage. What additional issues can this masking cause? Always trying to be, and then you're never going to be because you can't.
Yeah. So masking is a very unhealthy way of coping with being authentic, being who you are, being true to who you are as a person, as an individual. There's a lot of things that everyone is different, everyone's unique. But when we start masking our thoughts, our emotions, our unique perks of joy, things that we're interested in, our hobbies, and we don't talk about them enough, we start hiding ourselves. And then once you start hiding yourself, you go into that loop where you self-isolate, you go into depression, you spiral down into a dark tunnel, a dark hole where you feel like you can't get out of. And it starts going deeper until the part where you feel like, oh, I actually need some help. But then sometimes it could be too late because you crawled so deep before you even ask for help or before you even realize it. It's so easy to get into that thought process. And I have done it in the past myself, hiding my heritage and hiding. I disliked being Chinese because when I was growing up I was being bullied for the colour of my skin. I was being bullied for the way I spoke. I had a little accent, or my English pronunciation was different. There was assumptions that I was good at martial arts. So then, to prove that point, I went to study martial arts. So,
good
but
for
you. Even then, no, I'm not. But I was interested in martial arts anyway. But I was inspired by more Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Again, those kind of like heritage things. But I stopped embracing being Chinese. I wanted to be a different colour. I wanted to speak different. I hated my heritage. There was periods of time when I was just like anti-Chinese everything.
Wow.
I hated being that associated with anything to do with like Hong Kong, China, like the whole thing. And again, this was my identity that I was hating because
it's a very strong reaction
of someone else's narrative of just words. Again, it's the meaning that you put behind them. But when you're growing up, you don't actually understand all this stuff, and it's hard, and it takes work to reprogram or redevelop understanding. What's our thought process? What's this self-awareness work that we need to start doing? Why am I the way I am? Why do I like the things I do? And then you start embracing who you are again, what you like, your uniqueness, what makes you you. Yeah. But most people when you start masking, you hide all those parts. And people can't see that light of yours. You stop shining. Yeah. And once you stop shining, then you just, again, spiral into the darkness where you're hidden. So that's the I'd say, unhealthy way of coping.
This is so fascinating because I would say, I what you say resonates with me, but to the extent where I was sent to elocution lessons to remove any trace of accent because my mum wanted me to fit in.
Wow,
I had to fit in because otherwise everyone would look at her. She was the migrant. She'd come over. I mean, she gave me a fantastic life. But it's a lot of that was her narrative that I had to look a certain way, sound a certain way. And I always remember anytime something would happen, she would always say, "It's because you're Chinese." And I'm not even Chinese, I'm Malay. Yes. So she was even denying her own. My dad, on the other hand, is Chinese, so whether that was something there. But it's just, parents can do that too. But again, it's that's not even my voice in the negative points. This is so enlightening. Now, what I love, I read an article in HBR, and they said, Harvard Business Review, the biggest problem is not what can we do, but what are we willing to do about these issues? And I think there is a reluctance sometimes for people to change, whether it's themselves or whether it's the system. So where can we start? How can we become more willing?
How to become more willing? Wow.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Answer all the questions in the world.
Yeah, everyone's challenges on this one.
Yes.
Like, how willing are you? Again, this goes to the leadership team, or it comes from top down. How willing are you to include everyone to be more, supportive of your work? Like, if you're building a business or organization, how willing are you to make it more, I suppose, visible to everyone else that you're doing a great job? Or that you're doing the services you are doing to help include everyone else. Trying to change everything and be willing to make change is putting yourself in training, having more training and development in yourself, in understanding, and being open to learning new perspectives, new cultures, different, how other companies are doing it across the world, or global companies are doing it. You could model and frame, find their framework. Look at their policies that they've done, or why is everyone working at that company? Why do people enjoy working at that company? And once you start, again, this is very hard because organizations will start looking at themselves, goes, what are we not doing? And why do people not enjoy working here? And it's tough conversations. It's like, if I'm not creating a healthy environment, how can I make it more healthy and more enjoyable so that I feel enjoyable to work here? Otherwise, it becomes toxic and becomes uncomfortable. Then everyone, because again, it's culture, and then it feeds off everyone else. It's like bad energy.
Yeah.
If one person or two people in the organization out of 100, it just spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. You can't please everyone. That's not what it aims for. But it's understanding that you're willing to make the change, so it makes it feel more inclusive. And that's a topic that I've just had training on. This about having inclusion as part of it, is being more open-minded about things that you don't understand and how you could probably incorporate into your company.
And if you don't mind just jumping in with one more question, just on that, with regards to what you're saying, you're absolutely right. There's a huge mental health crisis in the workplace. We get that. We understand that. But what you're saying is actually sometimes you need to go a bit deeper into that mental health crisis. What's actually causing that?
Yes.
And be willing to find that out. Not just, everyone's feeling a bit stressed, let's just give them some yoga. It's not about fixing the mental health issues. It's about fixing what caused it. And for some, it might be unconscious bias. It might be that people are feeling excluded. And actually, that's not as hard to deal with as maybe having to change a whole computer system because it's just really not working, and that's what's causing the stress. It's just about communication, isn't it?
That's what I was thinking, that everything comes back down to
Back to
communication.
words.
Always.
It is back down to communication. You're right. And I feel like that's a conversation that teams should always be having. It's like, what's causing you the stress?
So you really need a good, strong manager to kind of lead that and make sure that people are communicating, and that people aren't resentful of things that other people are saying, maybe because they're ignorant, not because they're rude or intentionally racist.
Yeah, again, that's put into having the right people in your team, the right line managers, the right leaders in place, the right people that's listening and actually embracing what's going on and understanding. Are it being caused by stress because of the system, or is it because the customer is being really, really nasty?
Yeah,
exactly.
So once you understand the cause of that, it's like, right, maybe we won't put you in front of the customer, we'll put someone else in front of the customer.
Yeah.
Someone who's able to manage or deal with that person's
behaviour,
way. That person's way of working might be different.
Yeah.
It might not suit you. It might suit someone else.
Yeah.
Someone else's. So again, that comes with communication.
Yeah, exactly. So along those lines then, what if somebody is willing to ask the questions, or willing to, you do care and you want to do something, but you're afraid to ask the questions because you don't want to ask the wrong ones, or you're afraid of offending and upsetting people. Exactly. So how do you start having these conversations, and is that part of the problem that we still refer to it as because we were talking before that we shouldn't really it shouldn't even be a thing now in 2025. That's kind of what we were touching on.
Yeah, so like you said, in these conversations,
yes,
it should be a conversation that we have, like, what did you have for food? How was your journey? How was your day? It should be the norm now.
Yeah.
However,
yes,
framing it differently is, I'm looking to understand more about your culture, but I'm not sure what's the best way about it. Would you mind help me or answering, a few questions or having a conversation? Like you said, conversation is more of a discussion. Like, I want to understand more about your culture, or how your culture could probably influence our company. Maybe we're looking to expand in your culture, in your heritage, wherever it is, because of the services and products we supply might be suitable.
Yeah.
okay,
So again, pre-framing it that you want to learn
yes,
is never an offence. So it's like, oh, you're willing to learn. Okay, cool. Let me help educate you or share with you my knowledge.
Yeah. Yes, and it's changing tone or changing attitude, isn't it?
yeah. So it's sort of being direct, but being direct in an interested way, showing your interest.
I mean, having tough conversations doesn't have to be tough. It's just how you frame it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people go, I don't like picking up the phone. Like, you haven't even spoken to the person yet. Just avoid a phone call. It's like, you just see the name, you're like, I don't want to speak to them. You don't even know what it's about. But like, sometimes it's like that.
It's so true. It's so true. And on that note, here to answer your workplace dilemmas is Dr. Stephanie Fitzgerald, the author of Reworked, and she will be talking about what's happening in your workplace. Over to you, Dr. Stephanie.
Welcome to the Reworked podcast, your bite-sized guide to workplace wellbeing. This is the space where we rework your working day to keep you feeling happy, healthy, safe and engaged. I'm Dr Stephanie Fitzgerald. I'm a health and wellbeing consultant and author of Reworked, putting health and happiness at the centre of your career. Okay, so on to our question. And this week we are talking about negative teams. So our emailer says, I recently joined a new team at work, which was created after a company reorganisation. So already we're thinking that's a bit tricky. I was excited about the change, but the people around me are very negative and it's getting me down. If I try and be positive or upbeat, I'm met with sarcasm and eye rolling. I try to focus on my own work and stay positive, but it is wearing me down. How can I get my team to be more positive and focused on the good instead of weighing us all down with negativity? So sadly, I suspect we've all been around a negative team. It's not unusual. What do we think? What can we advise?
I have a question, but so I don't know is the answer. The writer says, my team. Are they a team leader or are they part of the team? Because I think that makes a difference.
It does.
Yes, that's good. That's a good point. So I'm going to say, because it says I recently joined a new team, so rather than took on.
Yes.
So I'm interpreting, but I think maybe they're part of the team.
So if you're part of, then unfortunately it's harder to set the tone. And what they're doing is they are at least focusing on themselves, which is a good thing. But it is a struggle, and I think it's probably also about recognising that it is a struggle and accepting it, and not necessarily beating yourself up about not being able to change the vibe on top of feeling a bit negative because you're in that surrounding.
Yes. I mean, I wasn't sure either. But if they're part of a team, then I don't know, this might seem a bit simplistic, but if it was me, I think I'd suggest to either the team members, depending on the relationship with them, or the manager of the team, maybe we can just have a session where everyone just airs their grievances about the restructure and kind of just get them out. And then maybe then that can just be parked I mean, that it does sound very simplistic. I know things don't work like that.
No, it's not. It is actually a really good thing as long as it's managed properly.
Yes.
I only say that.
It could go off at a tangent, definitely.
So I've been in that situation where I've been part of the listening event, they like to call it.
Oh, okay.
But because I was a neutral, it was okay. However, I've also seen listening events and been part of listening events where the very people who are listening are the ones that you don't want to talk to about the negativity. So it doesn't work quite so well. So I think it depends on the facilitator. It's a good idea because it does allow everyone to get it out on the table. It's the thinking hats that I use to chair it, actually. The Edward de Bono, I think it is. It's the you air your problems when the black hat's on the table, and then you use a different colour hat to denote what would you like to see? How can we bridge the gap? What are the problems with bridging the gap? What are we going to do next? And that not only sets you a time on your meeting, and it also allows people to say what they need to say, but as soon as you've changed the hat, no one's allowed to go back and harp on about anything they've already said. Because otherwise you get into this weird moan fest rather than actually finding the solution.
Yeah, I mean, that's really constructive, isn't it? Because this is a problem, we all feel like this, it's a bit rubbish. Okay, how can we move on? Or how can we change things? Or how can we make it a better working? Yeah, so that's a really, really good idea.
It's just the structure to put onto it.
Yes.
But the worst part is if you do have a listening exercise and either you can't speak to the people who are there or it just turns into 2 hours of moaning.
Which can make you feel worse.
Particularly if the vibe is very negative, because it's not as though you're in a room full of, solution focused. Let's
exactly.
deal with this.
It doesn't sound like this team is like that, to be fair.
No. I think what struck me when I read this, so the bit at the end is, how can I get my team to be more positive and focused on the good? And I think the simple answer is you can't. But what you can do is think, how do I protect myself from this negativity? And I think I can remember, so I've certainly worked in teams where people said, you're too cheerful to work here. And I can remember having that kind of, the 360 feedback where you go around and someone said, Stephanie is relentlessly optimistic. And I don't think it was a compliment. I think they were sort of saying, she's like relentlessly cheerful. But for me, I think negativity is an energy drainer. It can really, if you come in and you're in a great mood and someone comes in there in a bad mood and they're slamming down their laptop and they're swearing, one energy does not balance the other, does it? The negativity really pulls everyone. Everyone's like, oh, right, let's hide ourselves behind our monitors. So for me, I think there's something about, personally, I wouldn't change. I am relentlessly optimistic. I've never let a negative team kick that out of me. So I think be true to yourself, but also don't be afraid to say to someone, Audrey, when we're talking about this and you're being negative, it's making me feel downhearted, or I'm struggling to find a solution, or I'm worried I'm irritating you, or don't be afraid to have those one-to-one difficult conversations, because they're a bit easier one-to-one. But also, I genuinely think sometimes teams don't realise. They don't. They're so in the habit of moaning, so in the habit of being negative. They've just been through a big reorg, and I'm quite sure everyone's probably got change fatigue. They've maybe had some job threat stuff. I mean, we don't know. I'm really, extrapolating here, but I do think there's something here where maybe there's been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of resentment towards the organisation. It's nothing to do with this individual, but they're feeling the sort of negative impacts of that.
And you've also got it worse sometimes if it's a two-peat team and then somebody's come in and you're the people who are still there and have been there all the time, and you may see it as a positive, but the people who've gone through the change aren't at the same place as you, and that's okay, but it is about understanding that. I guess it might be easier if you were to just join the team as a new person, kind of looking at it, oh, this is a joint team, it used to be different. Maybe then just having conversations about, well, what is the history? Asking the whys. I guess a lot of people often get, I know I do, I guess, feel more upset when they're not heard. So, and the way people try and get heard is not necessarily the most healthy. They shout louder.
That's true.
So really listening and asking the questions, perhaps.
And you almost have that power, don't you, when you're new in a team? So I've done that in jobs, so I've been there for up to a year, where I'm being like, sorry, it's probably because I'm new, but can I just ask?
Nice.
And you're sort of leaning on, and it could be, sorry, it's probably because we're a new team, but why are we so against everything? Why are we so negative? And obviously, you don't have to be quite so passive aggressive, but there could be like a really nice way of using, like, we're a new team, how do we as a team want to function? I'm very interested in where the leader is in this team. And what they are doing, to your point earlier, because I'm reading this as though they're not the team leader. I think if they are, there are good ways of setting tones, but if they're not, where is the leader? Because if they're quite hands-off on a new team, people can feel very neglected, very let down, very negative. So maybe there's something. I definitely feel as though my priority here would be, how do I protect my own energy and take good care of my health and happiness at work when I'm surrounded by what can be very toxic? But then secondly, what do I want to do to address it without taking on the responsibility of, this team is going to be, my new project. It's like, it sounds like they've got enough going on with that.
Exactly, they've got their job to do as well. And if they're not the team manager or team leader, then it's difficult. But you're right, it sounds like the team needs really strong leadership to kind of lead them out of this place and take them forward.
It's funny, I have to use this myself. It's an affirmation, and that is, I'm a problem solver, I'm not the solution. Because just in me, I've got this innate need to solve everything, but not only that, I'm the only person who can solve it. No one else can do it. And it's clearly ingrained from other experiences and other behaviours. But I think if you're taking on that responsibility, it just reminded me when you said it's not his or her issue to deal with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love that as a mantra. I think we should all take that mantra away. I love that. Well, we really hope that helps you rework your teamwork and helps you stay positive and protect your own energy. So good luck with that. Thank you so much for listening. We are wishing you all a great week at work.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. Jono, thanks for being with us again. So talking about changes, what is the key change then that could make the biggest difference, or one of the biggest differences in the workplace?
I say a key change I think most companies could probably start using is, again, having open, honest conversations. I think that's the easiest part to change.
Yes, it's true, actually.
How willing are you to change? It's down to the people, the leadership team, but also the attitudes of everyone else that's willing to. What's not working? First of all, is looking at if you're having these conversations, then definitely something needs addressing.
Not working.
Yes.
So having maybe a full team discussion, or a debate, or whatever's going on, what's not working? Just open up and find out what processes might need changing. It could be the systems, it could be the people they're managing, it could be the clients. Find out. It's not hard to root out the problems by having conversations.
I think that's so true, because you get to the point where organisations, they have the conversations around you.
Yeah, I was thinking
you're
that.
the one having the problem. It's like, oh no, let's not invite them.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a feeling of exclusion again, whilst they're discussing your problem.
Exactly, and how to fix it.
Oh my
without
goodness.
your input.
This is. Thank you for your time, Jono. This is open, probably a lot more discussion than closed, but I think that's the right thing, and I think that's what we need. So we've reached the point where we like to reflect on what we've learned. And one of the things that I will be thinking about is that language we program in. I really love the idea of marking certain things, whether you're looking for negative words or words that you always use, and what are the patterns. It's a great way of becoming more self-aware. I love that.
It's a really, really good tip, isn't it? Definitely. And I think loads of people could use it in all different areas of, their life.
Absolutely.
So it's a great one.
What are you taking from today?
For me, I think communication is the key to everything. I think, and broaching questions that you might not have wanted to ask because you might be afraid of offending people. So I don't know that I might ask someone about their heritage, but, of course, it's... Why would that be offensive? I think So that's a really good place to start, and just open the door to having conversations, and then who knows where that might lead. And then just a little conversation might solve a huge amount of issues. It's like the elephant in the room. If you don't address it, it's never going to go away, is it?
Yeah, it's true. I think that's really right. So maybe have conversations this week. And if the conversation hasn't worked because you've had conversations before, then go deeper, find out what's going on, and include the people that you're talking about. Let's hand it over to you, Jono, to give us your top tips to take away from maybe things we can do to advocate for more equality in the workplace.
Yeah, so my top tips would be... Number one is leadership, taking the accountability and responsibility to do more further training and understanding of what actually is required, and having more compassionate understanding goes a long way with working with your team, your people around you. It makes it more inclusive and more enjoyable. Like, you're including the team to be working with you and alongside with you. So that's one of the top ones, I would say. Number two is just being an ally, just calling out behaviours and things that you don't enjoy seeing. It could be verbal abuse, it could be little wordings that you go, oh, I noticed you said something like that. Maybe next time we could try and change it to something else and word it a bit differently. Again, framing it differently could go have a much more impactful understanding of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say. And number three is, I would say, is building a supportive network around you. Having the right people around you goes a long way. Noticing who's actually supporting you and inspiring you and pushing you and pulling you forwards is key. Not dragging you down, always abusing you, always saying negative things about you. And those, again, it's finding that right environment. If you can't find it at work, find it outside of work. And it could be things like, for instance, for myself, it's finding confidence through kickboxing. Because it's a different class, you get to meet new people, you're training, and maybe it's Toastmasters for public speaking, and learning again how to speak, how to listen, or how to serve as a leader, and how to help others grow. And I think that's part of the the things that you may not get enough at work, you could always do outside of work. There's a lot of things you could do, not just work hours, but outside, if you're really committed to learning and developing and growing and understanding more about yourself and having your identity, who makes, who you are, what you are. And again, that helps you to spark your light more shiny and more shinier, but more also brighter, and then you can start flying.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Jono, where can we learn more about you or find you, should we wish to follow up?
So you can find me at the Man Cave. I'm always helping out and volunteering there. If you don't find me there, then you could always go to my website at jonopoon.com.
We'll put that in the show notes. Jono, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, as always. Come back on the show soon.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
And have a healthy week.